Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for both leading with values and putting a human face on this moment. I want to thank Jay as well. Thank you to the Carpenters, as you said, putting the gang back together. I think this is third of the last 4 years we've been together signing landmark housing reforms, and that simply would not have happened without the Carpenters, not just the Northern California Carpenters led by Jay, but the remarkable leadership of Doug McCarran, who's really asserted himself in very powerful and meaningful ways and has had the back of a process, knowing that at the end of the day, we'd have the back of workers. And so I just want to thank all of you for being here on behalf of the Carpenters, because in so many ways we wouldn't be here without you. Before I wax on about the person to my left and the right, I want to just briefly make a few observations. In so many ways, we've struggled over the course of the last many decades to reform our housing rules and regulations. That began to change, at least from my perspective, in a meaningful way in 2017, 2018, where you started to see a series of reforms advanced by Senator Atkins, Senator Skinner, many other leaders in the Assembly and the Senate. We saw that leadership expand and grow with the extraordinary dynamism of Senator Wiener and his commitment and resolve to this issue, and Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks. Their resolve, their commitment to continue to do more is demonstrably and foundationally the reason that I can lay claim to having the privilege of affixing my signature to these particular bills today. Their tenacity has led to this moment, supported by those you see around me, and they're called to do more and be better. We recognize in California, as the Senator was saying, as he opened up the conversation today, the abuses of the CEQA process. I recall those abuses intimately as a member of the County Board of Supervisors in San Francisco, trying to expand bike lanes in San Francisco, only to see CEQA used against expanding environmental bike lanes in the city and county of San Francisco. That was not what I think CEQA was intended for. We've seen this abuse over and over again. We've fallen prey to litigation as a strategy, as delay as a strategy. And as a consequence of all of that, we have too much demand chasing too little supply. It's not complicated. This is Econ 101, supply-demand imbalance. I've said it before, I'll repeat it. This issue of housing explains more things in more ways on more days than any other issue to explain the challenges and the plight of so many Californians. So many of the challenges that ail us can be connected back to this issue. Unless we address this issue head on, we'll continue to be vexed by so many of these challenges as it relates to the challenges of the middle class and working folks, the issues of what's happening on our streets, in sidewalks. All of these things are foundationally and fundamentally connected. So that's why today is a big deal. This is, and I can humbly say this, as someone who's been a student of this and a practitioner of sorts in the last 6+ years, the most consequential housing reform that we've seen in modern history in the state of California. Long overdue, absolutely. This budget that is connected to that is a budget that builds, and it is a point of pride to be able to advance these bills and what are promoted and promised. It's not just a housing package. It's also about infrastructure. It's also about the high-speed rail. Senator Wiener mentioned it's about child care facilities, about health care facilities. It's about broadband in the last mile, not just the middle mile. It's about getting things done. It's not just about homeowners that was referenced. It's also about renters, more than doubling the rent tax credit, almost 4xing it for those with dependency. Significant increase to the renters tax credit. It's about reforming permitting, Coastal Commission, getting in line again, the abuses that we've seen there with most other state agencies. Across the board, the spectrum of reforms that are in these two bills that I'm about to sign are transformative. And so I want to, again, just thank everybody for being here, and the Speaker and his commitment and resolve for being there throughout this process, being there late at night. I can attest to that. I think turns out you were in the room when I was complimenting you, thank God, with the Speaker, to the Senate for stewarding this process, for allowing us to indulge in an extractive process of sorts. I'm not naive. I said this is a budget that builds because this is linked to the budget. I may have signed a budget bill on Friday, but it means nothing unless these bills are signed tonight. And so that's why I want to extend one final point, and that's gratitude and appreciation to the leaders allowing for this process. To the Speaker and the Pro Tem, I am deeply mindful of what you must have gone through in terms of the quiet commentary. I've heard some publicly, but I can't imagine the quiet commentary from your members about this process. I heard a little bit at it on the floor today, and I recognize that. But this was too urgent. This was too important to play chance. It was too urgent, too important to allow the process to unfold as it has for the last generation, invariably falling prey to all kinds of pratfall. And I was too concerned that that would indeed occur again if we allowed this process to unfold in the traditional way. So I'm deeply mindful of what was asked of you and deeply grateful. The Senator, Assembly members, thank you for that indulgence as well. And thank you for your contributions as co-authors of this effort, for all of the nuances and amendments and reforms that are reflected in your authorship and your stewardship. To Miles, thank you. To the Ledge team for going toe-to-toe on VMT. Miles today, I was watching. To Christine Herrera, who's in absentia, Christine was masterful throughout this process. To former staffers that have been pounding me, Jason Elliott and others, on this process for some time. To the mayors out there that said, look, you're going to sue us with this housing accountability team. Give us the tools to get into compliance with the housing element. Give us the tools to meet our RENA goals. To the NIMBY movement that's now being replaced by the YIMBY movement. Go YIMBYs. Thank you for your abundant mindset. It's a plug to Ezra. And it really is about abundance. And to the movement that they represent, which I think was reflected in the comments made a moment ago about getting big stuff done. The world we invented has been competing against us. We have got to perform. And if we can't address this issue, we're going to lose trust. And that's just the truth. And so this is so much bigger in many ways than the issue itself. It is about the reputation of not just Sacramento and legislative leadership and executive leadership, but the reputation of the state of California. And so our state of mind has been resolved. And with gratitude and deep respect to the extraordinary leaders, capital L leadership, assembled here today, I thank you, and it is my pleasure to sign these two important bills. Unless you have any objections.
No, please sign.
Which one's yours?
That's the assembly one.
This is, you're interested in that one?
Yeah.
It's thicker, I'll sign it.
We're a rowdier bunch.
You are a rowdier bunch. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm surprised this one's not as thick as that one with all the amendments.
Short and sweet. Short and sweet.
It's a simple bill.
And with that, we're here to answer any questions. I know it's late, and we'll have another chance tomorrow as well. I have a press conference about 40 minutes away on topics perhaps that are not necessarily germane to this. Please, anyone.
I have a logistical question. There was some confusion between the two houses. I asked consultants today. There's a section of SB 131, the housing bill that you wanted, and the California Business Roundtable is circulating this letter that says SB 131 forces families to pay the highest prices for home energy by banning natural gas hookups in new says that oil and gas infrastructure are not part of the rezoning component. Is that true? Are new homes with gas hookups not?
I'm going to let the senator speak because he leaned
for
in.
131.
131.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we introduced the 131, it was originally SB 607 to make some reforms and modernizations to CEQA. We decided that we did not want that to facilitate fossil fuel extraction. Fossil fuels are not the future. Clean energy is, and so, and in fact, we saw the oil industry sue the city of LA under CEQA when LA decided to phase out oil extraction. And so when we talk about CEQA being abused for non-environmental purposes, that was like one of the poster children. And so the bill did not apply to fossil fuel. But it's not about hookups.
Okay, but it's oil and gas facilities.
Yeah, so they can't use this if they're going to build a new oil refinery or a new oil field. They cannot.
So this is inaccurate, what they're saying.
Yes, that's inaccurate.
May not be the first time. That's why I stepped aside for that editorial comment. Look, well, not from my perspective, as long as I'm here. Look, I've had the privilege of assigning my signature to 42 CEQA reform bills. I think reforming, modernizing CEQA is incredibly important. That said, eliminating it, no. I believe in sort of foundational core tenets process, same with NEPA. But the abuses, time to delivery, addressing urgency of need, addressing the imperative of transitioning to a low-carbon, green growth future and changing the way we produce and consume energy, addressing the issue of the housing crisis and affordability. I absolutely find that there are areas where we can advance some common sense reform that can bring people together and not divide folks. But from my perspective, no, I would not sign any bill to eliminate foundationally the core tenets of CEQA. Well, I'm open to argument, interested in evidence. As I said, 42 proof points of that in the past. But this is the most comprehensive. This is the most foundational. This is the most common sense as well. This has been the holy grail for the housing movement for decades now. Just getting to this point on infill. This is the stuff, as a former mayor, boy, I only wish we had. By the way, as a future ex-governor, you're welcome to the next governor of California. Please remember that when they announce record-breaking housing starts into the future. Laurel?
That was actually just where I was heading, was just kind of what was different now.
These folks to my left and right, their tenacity, their willingness. Look, we had private conversations. If I have your back in this process, would you willing to have my back as it relates to sort of challenging the process? It was a lot at stake. $321 billion, in fact. It's the budget that now formally and officially is passed in the state. And as was said, the reputation of the fourth largest economy in the world. And so that was an important commitment that was made, and on the basis of a relationship that we've had with these folks. And that relationship extended to the pro tem and the speaker, and the relationship of trust that we have in terms of their commitment to steward this process and do it in a fair-minded way. So you combine that sort of anchor of those four leaders and the wisdom of their members that are assembled here, the backing of the carpenters that are willing to go to bat on behalf of working folks and had a reputation for delivering. Combination of all those factors, and yes, a more abundant mindset, literally and figuratively, as it relates to this issue and not wanting to play. I don't think we've been playing small ball. I want to be careful there, but not playing in the margins as it relates to incremental reforms. We needed to go bold and big on this Holy Grail reform.
But what about in the larger career?
No, I mean, this is just getting stuff done. I mean, we've had this mindset for years. We've been, again, the last 6 years, no one's been dormant. The policymakers have been advancing significant reforms across the spectrum on housing and homelessness. It wasn't a priority over the course of decades, many, many different administrations. So we've been at this. I think it's a flywheel. It's momentum. Again, just building coalitions. The YIMBY movement has grown and grown and grown. Just a recognition. You can't continue to do what you've done. You'll get what you've got. And for these cities, I think the day I came here, we totally changed things with the first announcement, which was suing or putting on notice 46 cities in this state. Putting on notice as they were out of their housing compliant elements, suing Huntington Beach, meeting and negotiating with 46 others in Northern California and Southern California, creating the new housing and accountability unit with the leadership that you see up here, funding that unit, now incorporating homelessness into it. The $1 billion that the Pro Tem mentioned today, that's another component part, increasing our tax credit program, increasing our supports for home ownership, first-time home buyers. Those were not priorities in the past. So we've had a more abundant mindset. We were missing, however, this foundational component.
That leads me to the question. How would this distribution of building housing, where you
Well, here's the great thing. It's bottom up, not top down. And there is another holy grail. As a former mayor, it's sacrosanct, and localism will be determinative in those questions. But we won't have the abuses of doing zoning at the local level and then project investment at the local level that have to go through a redundant process of extended the CEQA analysis. And so local control in that respect within the frameworks of local leadership. But again, with the ability now to move, not even in an expedited timeline, the 270-day judicial process, which has been incredibly effective at Sites Dam, incredibly effective with one of the largest solar and battery projects in the world, second proof point of its effectiveness. This is significantly more impactful, but local government will make that determination. You guys all talk about that.
Just to speak to what we could see in the near future on this.
Well,
2.5 million.
Yes, exactly. As many as possible. I mean, a couple things. What we see is that when we pass housing laws and then truly remove all the loopholes, because sometimes when you pass a law, most cities do their very best to comply. I want to be clear. I don't want to broad brush, but the cities that don't want to comply are very ingenious at finding loopholes, and then we have to close them. If you look at what happened with ADUs, accessory dwelling units, it was 2015-16 that the legislature really started putting teeth into that law. It took a good 5-6 years for ADU production to really ramp up. It takes a while for the market to adjust. Of course, the last 5 years, we've had a pandemic, a supply chain disaster, and now super high interest rates. But what we've seen is that it takes some time, but then the laws really start to take off. And so at some point, interest rates, I pray, will come down. And to me, the goal is set up the right structure for the long term. This isn't about what's going to happen necessarily in the next year or 3 years. It's about decades to come. And when the economic conditions are right to build a ton of housing, that we want to make sure that the structure is there to facilitate that.
And I'll just add to that, I think part of our job also as lawmakers is to doggedly follow these laws to see if they're actually being implemented the right way and if they're being effective. And a lot of what I've done, and many of us have sort of tracked as we've done the streamlining stuff, what's working and what's not working, how can we make sure it's effective? And that's honestly why we landed here today, right? We've gone at these CEQA reforms in prior years, but what we've realized is we really need this sort of broader infill exemption. So at least while I'm in the legislature, it's tracking and seeing how effective are these things being. Because we don't want to sit here and ram our head against the wall in the politics and then have nothing to show for it, right? Our job is to deliver for our constituents and making sure that we're actually doing what we're saying we're doing when you hear us talk about how great this is going to be. So it is our job to then follow it all the way down to make sure it's actually being implemented in the way that we hope it will be.
I was joking about the 2.5 million, but I'm not. It's legally binding on ARENA. And it's meaningful because we mean business as it relates to requiring and enforcing, which has component parts from the builder's remedy to broader issues as it relates to future funding which the state is now stipulating with more enforcement capacity, including now on homelessness. One of the reforms, and thank you to legislature, I appreciate on encampment prioritization, the ability to redirect money as it relates to the HAP funding, which is the new round of money going to the cities and counties and these COCs, these regional bodies, and making sure they're in compliance with their housing element. They're not in compliance, no money. So all these things are connected. So carrots and sticks in ways we haven't seen in the past. I hope not to have to do this again. I just seen unless you appreciate that process, I'm happy to get all of it done. In fact, in a budget, but no. Look, I'm not trying to create any precedent here. I just think we have an unprecedented crisis of affordability in this state, and it's just growing. I mean, look, forgive me. You saw the pro tem and speaker. I'll end as I began. Very emotionally attached to this reality. I can extend the same with a sister who quite literally lived in a cutout of the hallway because we didn't have more than one bedroom where I slept on the couch. With a mom who was working almost 3 jobs, 2.5 jobs, and renting, and then rented out the spare bedroom for most of my childhood. The emotional attachment to the issue of affordability is real and raw, and for too many people. And so I think this issue deserved, if not a precedent, to challenge perhaps at least one off a precedent. They're working on that, right?
Would you support? Yeah, there's a bill that could do that.
They're working on that. I'll leave it at that. I'm intimately familiar with the conversations around that and have great confidence that we'll achieve our stated goals. I have great confidence. I've never, you cannot quote me, saying I would sign a bill that I haven't read, or at least analyzed in detail before that. But I'm confident that we'll achieve the goal as stated.
Governor,
Well, it's you. I don't know that you can be superintendent or even do anything without being able to multitask. I can get in the weeds if you'd like on some of the component parts of the bill, the $233 million to add to the $2.1 billion to finish out the job on pre-K for all. The work we're doing with an additional $60 million to finish out universal meals, the $525.9 million to finish out after school and summer school for all. I say all this not to impress you, but to impress upon you an appetite for getting in the weeds and policy making. So that includes housing, always has, homelessness, point of pride. And again, I just refer you back to my first State of the State, where we prioritized these issues, and a subsequent State of the State where we extended the entire focus on the issue of housing and homelessness. So our ability not to get distracted on that, I think has been relatively consistent. So, but I'm very proud of my staff for their handling and stewardship. Why? There's 2,000 bills, including the one that was just referenced. I have an unbelievable team, and I empower Tamika to do good work. I have great trust and confidence. So by definition, that's the only way anyone can govern, particularly a state larger than 21 state populations combined. But I assure you, there's a reason I was giving Miles a hard time about Senator Grove's conversation back and forth. I tend to enjoy this as well. Thank you all very much.